There was once a country ruled by a powerful family. The head of this family was a woman known as the Queen, and the Queen had a son known as the Prince, and the family called themselves the Firm. The Firm displayed their prince as a dashing heir to the throne, a Prince Charming, but he was a gentle, retiring man who talked to his plants. And one day he fell in love. She was a young noblewoman after his own heart, with virtues that might have made her a competent queen, quiet, loyal, fond of horses. And she returned the prince's love. But it was rumoured that she was not quite innocent, and the Firm worried lest a former lover should sell secrets to the pamphleteers and bring shame on their house. So the prince was ordered to one of the Firm's most distant dominions. He had neither the conditioning nor the character to resist, and broken-hearted he went. The noblewoman married another and disappeared from view. With the prince abroad, the Firm began the search for a suitable mate for him, a virgin from the nobility, a beauty, a broodmare to ensure the future of the house. And they found her. She was 19, a blank sheet on which they could write, and tall, which pleased the Firm, for they were short. She was fair and charmingly shy. She loved children and seemed as pliable as the prince, a flawless rose that had even failed all her O-levels. The wedding, a majestic international celebration, made the story of Cinderella look like social realism. The princess was radiant, and the prince wore a sailor's uniform. 1 billion people worldwide, more than ever before, watched it on their sedation screens. The new princess took her duties seriously. She gave the Firm an heir, then a spare, both sound of wind and limb, and the world applauded. But oh, how the prince longed for his former love, so he went to her from time to time. And oh, how his lack of love for the princess hurt her, for she was a vulnerable girl with a well of affection to give, but nobody except her children to give it to. Miserable, the princess set about doing what she did best. She lent herself to those who were as helpless as she, and the people were glad to have some small part of her because she was a star. She was shot at from the left, who called her wooden top, and from the right, who called her interfering, but she ignored them and became the tactile princess. She shook hands with an untouchable and changed the world for that unfortunate caste. And the friends of Dorothy loved her. She cuddled the damaged children. She hugged the old and the ill and the unwanted. She comforted the victims of war and held the stumps of the amputees. She proclaimed her own disorders, and the people felt she was one of them. And she grew strong. Meanwhile, the people saw that the prince and the princess did not love each other. Gossips tattled, presses rolled, airwaves crackled, and the world gobbled it all. Both the prince and the princess hired busybodies to fight their corners. The prince's affair became public. The princess had liaisons with unsuitable partners. It was even rumored that one of them had fathered her youngest son. The snoops and the pamphleteers hounded her everywhere. The prince spoke of his love for another, but the world looked at the princess's dress. He was vanquished in the public brawl. A star will always outshine its satellite. The Firm could keep the prince and princess together no longer, and they divorced. Relieved, the prince rushed back to the arms of his true love, the noblewoman who divorced her husband. The Firm offered private terms to the princess, which she publicized, for she was no longer pliable. And she was eventually pleased to accept a very different sum. With her newfound single status, she plunged with even more enthusiasm into her good works, earning enormous praise, but fulsome derision too. No matter. Charities fought for the dazzling, still shy smile that opened hearts and coffers. But the snoops harassed her with renewed vigor. for the people were greedy for her every breath. Yet there were some who wished that the prince and his true love, the princess and her lovers, indeed the whole firm and their lickspittles, would all just go away and leave the money in the till. Then fate put in its bloody oar. One night, the princess was killed, suddenly, in a shocking and unnecessary accident, as she and one of her lovers were fleeing from the Snoops. Many said that these tattlehounds had killed her. Some said it was the firm. But surely it was the insatiable hunger of the multitudes and her hunger for love. The world stopped for a moment in numbed horror. Then, as the full meaning sank in, the grieving started on a scale no soothsayer foresaw. The firm observed the formalities according to their traditions. They went to ground, showed no emotion, and waited for the sorrow of the people to pass. All would be all right now that that turbulent woman was gone. But it wasn't. The people had let out a sigh of anguish that was echoing round the world. Even the indifferent and the cynical looked into themselves and were surprised to find a sense of loss. The absence of any cries of pain from the firm was bitterly noted. The firm at last joined in the chorus, but it was too late. Once again there was a battle for the people's favour, only now there was no princess to fight her corner, so the people fought it for her. The English rose had become England's rose. The people came in their multitudes to say goodbye to their princess. 2 billion people, more than ever before, watched their sedation screens and wept as she was carried through the streets. The princess's brother, a nobleman of temporarily inflated consequence, stood in the pulpit of the great temple and poured scorn on the firm in revenge for his wronged sister. Then, from outside the temple, came a noise like the patter of many running feet. It swept across the parks, down the avenues, round the square outside, and was irresistible. It was the sound of growing applause. It surged through the open doors of the great temple, was taken up by the congregation and engulfed the nave. And the great and the good joined in. The people were speaking. The country held its breath as the firm sat still and stony-faced. It seemed like one of those moments depicted by the great playwright when one mighty family challenges the rule of another. The applause turned into a cheer, which became a roar, which reverberated across the land, an earthquake of emotion that was meant to swallow up the firm and all its works, leaving only justice and love. But it soon passed, a noise that was soon forgotten. The people had spoken, but they had not acted. And so it came to pass that 14 years later, there was another majestic wedding. The elder of the 2 young princes had come of age. The bride was the young prince's teenage sweetheart, not of the nobility, but an urchin neither, known to the firm as the commoner, the first to be accepted by them for many generations. Her patience had earned her her place, and this time the firm had not stood in the way of their prince's heart. They even let her family stand near them in the great palace. The people rejoiced because she was one of them, and thus they felt part of the firm, and the firm part of them, which it wasn't. It was another international celebration, watched by billions on their sedation screens. This time the young prince wore a pilot's uniform, but once again the world looked at the bride's dress, a dress thought to be even more beautiful than the now forgotten dead princesses. The bridesmaids were led by the commoner's sister, equally lovely in pure white, and the world admired her rear. The firm was outshone once again. Their own young women were even called the Ugly Sisters. Some suggested history was repeating, but it was just the wheel of life turning once more. and even the most hardened cynics were mollified by the splendor. And the young prince's father, the former Prince Charming, who had with great discretion at last married his true love, did smile. For this time it seemed the couple had married for love, or something like that anyway.